Hello and welcome to another edition of ProtoMet's First Impressions, where I give my thoughts on the first episode of any new tokusatsu show. And today I'm going to be talking about the first episode of GARO Versus Road. Now, I just gotta get this out of the way right now. Versus Road? VR? That's not a coincidence if you haven't seen this, because the premise of this series does heavily involve virtual reality. So that much is made apparent right from the get-go. So this is a GARO series that takes place in virtual reality. Yay! What is interesting is that this series is probably the first entry in the GARO series to not already have a GARO. The GARO armor does appear in the episode, but it acts as a sort of goal for the competitors in the virtual reality game that this series is set in to reach the rank of, I guess. So, I guess I should probably start talking about the actual plot. So, the first episode starts with 100 guys waking up in a virtual world, in a virtual reality game called GARO Versus Road. That is actually the name of the game that they're playing. And they are told by this mysterious woman, whose name I can't remember for some reason. Shako? I'm gonna go with Shako. I'm probably wrong, but I'm going with Shako. Also, I just realized this is in the frame. Ignore that. Ignore it. Anyway, she tells the competitors that their ultimate goal is the GARO armor that she shows off, which does have a distinct look for this series. Gotta give them props. This is a very unique looking GARO, complete with like neon looking highlights. I know they're not actually neon, but it's like Tron style neon VR stuff, you know? And we do get a bit of a backstory for some of the characters. Specifically, for this first episode, we get a bit of backstory for the characters of Hiyashi and Kuon. Because we get a flashback revealing that Hiyashi has a tendency to skip school to play at arcades, and he ends up beating this guy who looks like a Yakuza, and at one point punches the woman he's with, not playfully, just straight up punches the woman when he loses at an arcade game to Hiyashi. He doesn't punch Hiyashi, he punches the woman next to him, who is his companion. And then he demands that Hiyashi pay for the money that she won't be able to make as a prostitute because that guy hit her. He's not going to pay for it. He's going to have this arcade kid pay for it. Real stand-up guy, this guy. Definite winner here. This is when Hiyashi's friend or brother, I'm not sure, they don't really specify which, Kuon shows up and chokehold, puts a dude in a sleeper hold and knocks him out cold. Or, no, he doesn't knock him out cold, but he does get him in a sleeper hold. And Hiyashi tells the guy, yeah, you better just give up, you're not going to win. This scares the Yakuza tough off. And Kuon actually ends up berating Hiyashi for skipping school to play at the arcade. And then tells him that if you skip school tomorrow, I'm not going to come help you when you get in trouble. But while they're eating at the cafe where they're having this conversation, Hiyashi does mention an urban legend about some mystery VR game, which is apparently amazing, like nothing you've ever seen. And apparently if you win, you can get whatever you want, which is what leads us to the events of GARO Versus Road. Because Hiyashi gets a virtual reality headset sent to him mysteriously, and tells Kuon about it. Kuon himself also gets a virtual reality headset, mysteriously, because it literally just appears behind him while his back is turned. And so they participate in this game called GARO Versus Road. Now, the woman in the game, this is where the flashback actually comes back a little bit later, but we'll get to that real soon, because that flashback stuff took place before the start of the episode. But not in the Deadpool movie kind of way where it's kind of hopping around. But I digress. The mystery woman, Shako, I'm just going to call her that, because that's what I decided to go with. She tells them that all 100 men are warriors. And some of them was like, well, why should we care? What's keeping us from just quitting playing? And she doesn't say that there's really any reason that they can just stop playing. She doesn't say that there's nothing preventing them, but she does entice them to play by telling them that they can become whatever they want in this game, because their sets of powers are completely dependent upon the players, and so it's not exactly a level playing field, but it's not necessarily. It doesn't automatically mean that certain players are at a disadvantage versus others. Like, for example, I'll get to one example a little bit, but then Shako basically says if one of you knights can attain the rank of Garo, you can get whatever you want, which is just. I will say this: the fact that this doesn't seem to be the traditional knight culture already existing, and instead has some other thing going on. I like that about this series. Part of me kind of wishes it still had the knight culture that the other entries in the franchise had, but that's just me. Then Shako introduces 2 enemy characters, horrors, and basically tells them that by the end of this opening round, the 100 knights will be reduced by half. And she sicks the horrors on them, who proceed to then start killing people, which causes mass panic, and everybody rushes out of the room and into the woods. And it's at about this point that I'm starting to realize that this is seeming like a familiar premise, not just from, not necessarily from the tokusatsu genre, but definitely from pop culture as a whole. And I'm going to get into that real soon, because they escape out into the world, so the horrors keep attacking them. We do get brief introductions to a couple characters, like this Y-tuber, a fan of his, who goes by the Y-tube handle of Galactic Kingfisher. We get this very feminine-looking guy with like a plush patchwork bunny. Looks to be quite the coward. Probably going to end up being that kind of character. In fact, I think at one point one guy almost thinks that it's a girl, but he quickly realizes his mistake. So that's a character you're going to have to keep an eye on. There's also this kind of blonde, white-haired guy played by the actor who played Owl Ninja and Ninja, but I can't remember the character's name. Takayama, I think. Not important, because he's really kind of a throwaway character in this episode. He's definitely one of the characters you're going to want to keep an eye on, but for the sake of this episode, he doesn't really do a whole lot, other than at one point actually fight one of the horrors while everybody else is running in terror. Eventually, Hayashi ends up encountering that Yakuza tough guy that he had encountered at the arcade before, and they get into a fight. And here's where the powers are, the strength are dependent upon the player, because he actually does a pretty damn good job of fighting against this Yakuza tough, whereas in the real life he was nowhere near that strong. And he probably would have won the fight had the Yakuza guy not grabbed a screwdriver and stabbed it into Hayashi's leg. So, yeah. There's also, like, 3 other Yakuza guys that show up, and you can tell that they're colluding just by looking at them. Hayashi has a close encounter, or not Hayashi, Kuon has a close encounter with a horror, but the horror just kind of glances at him, but ignores him. And then Kuon ends up getting back in touch with Hayashi and the Yakuza tough who's about to kill Hayashi, and Kuon ends up Kuon, for a good chunk of this episode, has been running away from the horror attacks that have been occurring, and I'm under the assumption that this series, despite being a game, probably is actually killing off the players who get killed, and my reasoning is that this is a GARO series. Of course they're going to do something like that. They're not going to hold back from that. So this is a game where people's lives are literally on the line, whether they wanted it to be that way or not. Who knows? It's certainly not the traditional knight training, let me tell you that. Part of me thinks that maybe part of this is to determine an actual successor to GARO, but given something mentioned in the preview for the next episode, which I'm not going to reveal, that might not be the case, but who knows? I don't right now. But Kuon gets into a fight with the Yakuza tough, and basically tries to tell him, stop fighting, and when the Yakuza tough just will not relent, Kuon finally just lets loose and beats the guy up and kills him, I guess. He disappears in a way that was different from when the horrors killed humans, so who knows? Maybe he'll come back. Probably not, though, because he was clearly this episode's enemy. And then we get back to a group of another bunch of characters who have managed to evade the horrors. And that Galactic Grand Fisher guy, he starts proclaiming himself a hero, like he had mentioned earlier, wanting to be when everybody was gathered in the warehouse area that they started the game in. And then the 3 Yakuza guys who had earlier been shown scrounging for weapons, straight up murder him. And they learn that, oh, we can player kill in this game. Cool. And it's at this point that it basically becomes a battle royale. Or, for you plebes out there, Hunger Games. Yeah, I said it. Not sorry. Not sorry. But yeah, so essentially this series is going to be essentially what the Kamen Rider Ryuki kind of was, minus them already being armored heroes. They're not Kamen Riders, that's for sure, because nobody in this episode transforms into a Makai Knight. So, got something stuck in my teeth. Off the bat, I can already tell that this is going to be a different entry in the GARO series. Definitely different just from the premise alone. And I'm interested to see how far this story goes. If it's going to keep going with this battle royale style of storytelling all the way to the end, or if partway through they're going to shift to some other storyline. That's possible. I mean, they kind of did that with Vanishing Line. But there's also the possibility that this might be a shorter entry in the franchise, similar to Jenga. Not Jenga, Jenga. That's a whole thing. Jenga Kami no Kiba. Like the last live-action entry in this series that wasn't either a mini-series or a movie. Speaking of, Jenga ended up being kind of a unique entry too. But yeah, this is definitely going to be different, I can tell, and I'm interested to see how that goes. Would I recommend checking it out? It really kind of depends on your taste. This first episode, at least, didn't have the more traditional tokusatsu elements, like the guys in suits. It did, but they were playing just the monsters. Nobody transforms in this episode, and I'm not entirely sure if they're going to in the next episode, or maybe sometime down the line, or ever. Who knows? And this is definitely for mature audiences, just like all the other entries in the GARO franchise. So, I'm probably rambling on, and hopefully I'm not getting to the time limit that my camera has for how long recording can go. So, I can't really say that I recommend Versus Road, but I will say that I am interested in seeing how far along it gets. Hopefully it ends up being great, and not winding up like Jenga did, to be honest. I'm not a fan of how that season played out, but I'll get to that whenever I review that show. So, until next time, this has been me, ProtoMet, giving my first thoughts on the first episode of GARO Versus Road. And until next time, but before I go, I do want to mention that the YouTube channel Toei Tokusatsu World Official just released like a whole lot of episodes of like a bunch of their shows, and I'm not intending to go watch all those or even review all of them, but it is definitely something to check out if you're a fan of Tokusatsu. Very interesting that they're releasing it with English up, so go check that out. Not sponsored, just I just want to get that out for other Tokusatsu fans. That's why I'm putting it right in. Anyway, until next time, this has been me, ProtoMet. See ya.